Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast series for financial advisors. Today's episode is Up Close with Rich Steinmeier, LPL CEO on the transformation of a $1.8 trillion company. I'm Louis Diamond, and this is the Diamond Podcast for financial advisors.
At Diamond Consultants, our mission is to help advisors live their best business life. We want every elite advisor to find exactly the right place for their business and their clients to thrive, whether it's at a wirehouse, a regional, boutique, or independent firm. As the industry's leading recruiters and consultants, we've transitioned more than $250 billion in assets under management in the past decade, and each year, 25% of transitioning advisors who manage $1 billion or more are our clients. If you'd like to talk, please feel free to give us a call at 908-879-1002. Are you a financial advisor who's curious about whether you're in the best place to serve clients, or if there might be a better way to optimize your business for the future? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a new book that serves as a self-guided journey, walking you through the key steps that Diamond Consultants takes with our advisor clients, whether considering change or not. Visit diamond-consultants.com/thebook to learn more.
There's an interesting paradox to legacies. Many think they are static entities that must be maintained as is, immutable and resistant to change. Yet legacy firms like LPL Financial are proving that to be a misconception. They show that enduring legacies built to last are those established on a solid foundation of the past while continuously evolving and transforming to become better and stronger for the future. LPL was born in 1989 through the merger of two small brokerage firms, Linsco and Private Ledger, and designed as an alternative to traditional Wall Street firms. The founder's vision was centered around helping financial professionals build competitive businesses while they served their clients' best interests. Yet, as the firm's new CEO, Rich Steinmeier, puts it, the foundational legacy is in how LPL views their advisors. That is, they are LPL's clients. This tradition of treating advisors like people, not accounts, remains today with Rich at the helm. Since Rich rose to the rank of CEO of the firm in October of 2024, his role was to advance LPL's value propositions like taking care of their advisors and institutions so they can take care of their clients. And that means continually raising the service level bar, expanding offerings, and finding more ways for advisors to win. As Rich puts it, because if they don't, as our clients, they can fire us. That expansion includes a variety of ways for advisors to affiliate with the firm, transforming how advisors consider independence. As a result, LPL is among the most successful in the wealth management industry today and has plenty of room to run. Rich joins me today to talk about his journey up the ranks to the CEO role, giving us a perspective of the firm from each step along the way. Then we do a deep dive into LPL's value proposition, the advisors they serve, his vision for the future, and much more. It's a rare, candid conversation with a lot to discuss, so let's jump in. Rich, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Louis. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I've actually, in my bones, have known that you were going to become the CEO of LPL. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, I was at your Focus conference and you were giving a keynote about like variable annuities, and the crowd was just going nuts. You just had this energy and the CEO kind of vibe going. So I'm like, if he can pump people up about variable annuities, this guy has a big future ahead. So early congrats on the new job. I'm not surprised at all. Congratulations.
I appreciate it, but variable annuities are my jam, so it doesn't surprise me. Like, I think that was an anomalous event maybe, but I appreciate your bones endorsement of me, so thank you.
Oh yeah, you got it. Let's jump in. You've been on our show before, but it's been a while. So why don't you walk us through your background before joining LPL Financial in 2018?
Yeah, it has been a little while. So I came out of undergrad as a management consultant and did a couple of gigs as a management consultant. And an interesting turn of events, I used to work on factory floors, and I got an outreach through a headhunter to potentially join Merrill Lynch crazy turn of events. I didn't even own a suit at that time because I legitimately only worked on factory floors. I had to cobble together this blue jacket with blue pants, went and interviewed and joined Merrill Lynch, ultimately to launch what became Merrill Edge. There were some iterations in between that. The firm nearly went bankrupt during that whole thing. And then after that, I spent 6 years there and then went to UBS and spent some time there as well before ultimately almost 7 years ago, joining LPL and moved my family across the country. We moved from Princeton, New Jersey out here to San Diego, and the rest, as they say, is history.
So, what led you to LPL in the first place? Obviously, LPL has been around for many years and has always been a fairly well-known player in the space, but it typically, I would say, candidly, wasn't on the radar for executives at Merrill and UBS, and certainly not advisors, which we'll talk about the evolution. But what was it about LPL that led you to move your family across the country and leave what was probably a pretty good job at UBS?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm probably similar to a lot of folks who are in wealth in that as I got into it, I got intoxicated by advisors, by the entrepreneurial nature of the way they ran their business, by what they meant to the families that they serve. And so for me, so much of what I wanted my job to be about was serving advisors. And in my iterations that occurred prior to LPL, it felt to me like there was conflict that existed between the firm, the advisor, and what we call the end investor. And I actually wanted to get to a firm that was clearer in its mission. And it was very clear when I got here, when I started interviewing, I did not actually know LPL very well. So it wasn't like I came with intentionality. And as I came even through the interview process to hear that we call advisors our clients, that we call their clients end investors, that we define our success by making advisors successful and making institutions successful, there was a clarity of purpose that was what I was searching for. It's actually why I left Merrill to go to UBS, was I was looking to serve advisors. And for me, I found my home with the purity of just making sure that if we don't serve them well, they actually can fire us. And that, I actually think that tension is really important. Maybe lastly, Lewis, what you realize in that scenario where you're a vendor or a partner to an advisor, that means that I sit on the same side of the table as my clients. Like we work together for their success versus sitting, I think in other places, sometimes they can sit on opposite sides of the table in conflict. We're not. So I think when I learned into that, I got really driven to get here and I worked really hard to try to get here. And fortunately, the decision makers here granted me that opportunity. So I feel very privileged.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason. But I think it's a really interesting way to think about the way LPL interacts with its clients or advisors versus other firms, where I agree it sometimes feels a little bit adversarial, where it's us versus them, or the firms care most about their shareholders or the advisor's clients and forget that the advisor is the important link between it all.
Nothing goes without the advisor. Nothing happens
Yeah.
without the advisor. Nothing gets advanced without the advisor. Like it's interesting to, think that the firm drives the advisor. That is not true. If you're at a firm that the firm thinks that, the firm is wrong-minded. And there's a purity there that it makes it very easy for me. By the way, maybe I'm wrong, but I can tell you what, it's easy for me to come to work because I believe that. And I know that we need to be there in support of them.
Well said. So, for anyone living under a rock who's unfamiliar with LPL, maybe, can you describe the LPL value proposition?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Lewis, we are a full service wealth management firm. That means that we bring a full set of integrated capabilities to support advisors, largely in an independent construct. And maybe we'll get into that a little bit further along. We also support institutions. That means that we are a custodian. It means that we are an RIA. It means that we are a broker dealer. It means that we have an integrated set of technology solutions that largely are our own, that we own. We own our own advisory platforms, right? And the way that we go to market is, as we've just been alluding to, through advisors and institutions under their brands in support of making them successful. And this firm has been one of the pioneers in the independent segment, meaning that we acknowledge that the advisors own their business and that we make no claims to their business. And as such, we've pioneered those, building more and more capabilities and more flexibility in support of advisors. And so over the years, we've extended our value proposition from those core capabilities I talked about to helping advisors either deliver great advice by augmenting through services or helping them run a thriving business. So helping them with CFO solutions, marketing solutions, a cadre of solutions that allows advisors to construct their perfect practice. And then we show up to augment that if they want some supported capabilities that they may not want to hire or they may want to grow into in time.
Well said. And we'll definitely spend some time talking about the different business models that LPL has innovated. But I'm really curious to hear your take on the transformation that's happened at LPL. From my own experience, when I joined Diamond Consultants about 10 years ago, LPL was a known entity. It was the firm that was paying big deals and was truly independent and was one of the largest, if not the largest, independent broker dealer. But it wasn't necessarily attracting the size and sophistication of teams that you are today. So since you joined in 2018, given that's your lens into LPL, how specifically have you seen LPL transform itself? And what do you think has happened that's led you to where the firm is today, where the stock is ripping, advisory recruitment is absolutely on fire. And I think from my vantage point, the perception of LPL in the marketplace has radically shifted. So I'd love to get your take on it.
Yeah, one, thank you. That was really generous in your reflection on how we're performing. So I think when I joined here, I think we were proudly kind of wore those clothes that said IBD. And I think I was a little bit surprised when I got here because it felt like our capabilities relative to the capabilities I had seen at other firms were actually advanced. And so there was this perception in the marketplace that independent broker dealers, there was, you got a higher payout, you actually owned your own book, but there was this compromise that occurred in terms of capabilities delivered. And I was pretty directed in thinking like, no, guys, we're not compromised. In many regards, we're not compromised in those capabilities. And we're self-selecting to serve a marketplace that was narrower than actually our capabilities and certainly our cultural orientation would support. And so we went through a journey, Lewis, of thinking not how to get people to independence, but how to start to allow folks who moved into independence to thrive in independence. How can we also understand that we saw a lot of advisors who were here who started in a 1099 affiliation on our corporate RIA, and their practices evolved in time. They wanted to start their own RIAs. They wanted to go move into an actual W-2 construct. They may want different support. They evolve in time to serve high net worth clients as a center of gravity. And before a couple of years ago, those advisors would have to leave this firm to go seek out a different solution somewhere else. And so we put this all together and said, we need to have a full set of affiliation models that allow our partners to stay with us for the duration of their practice evolution. So they don't have to go choose. And as we did that, we largely did that for our existing advisors so that we could live with them throughout the journey of their life cycle of their business. But the truth is, it made us a lot more attractive in the external marketplace as well. And we began having some of those conversations that you alluded to with more complex, sophisticated advisors, and also advisors who didn't think that their journey terminated at a particular point in time, that they wanted to keep strategic optionality. And so we then went from kind of IBD to helping people succeed in independence. And I would tell you probably that next leg on our journey now is to become the best firm in wealth management. A clear articulation, uncompromised, no asterisk, no categorization, the best firm in the marketplace, supporting advisors in delivering their advice to their clients. And so there's kind of multiple legs on that journey, but I feel pretty good about where we are.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to break it down because it is true. The LPL started attracting larger teams from the corner office suites at wirehouses and the like when there was more options of how they can join the firm. There was more support, more infrastructure that they could subscribe to or get as part of their affiliation. What about on the service side though? That was always historically the knock on LPL was that it's this monster firm, service is really poor. You call someone and you don't get a straight answer. But I know I've seen that perception and just the actual experience that advisors have has shifted. So what would you credit to that? And how do you think you're able to transform what obviously perception is part of it, but also the substance behind how you service advisors?
I think, Lewis, that goes back to if you just want to call yourself an IBD and that's the standard that you want to hold yourself to, I think when I joined, I thought this firm was exceptional, but I do think that there was an element of, are we a best efforts firm? Which is, hey, we'll get as close as we can to the solution that you need, but it just felt like it was best efforts. And the standard wasn't high enough. Our aspiration wasn't high enough. Look, I came from automotive. I didn't actually explain this as I went through my background, but I worked at Ford, and I used to, as I'd said on those factory floors, there's a concept in automotive called a halo car. Like when I worked at a Dodge dealership, we made a Dodge Viper or we made a Plymouth Prowler. And I know that dates me for some of you out there. But the reason that automotive firms take those halo cars or even take race teams is that they want to work with materials that are more advanced. They want to work with smaller tolerances. They want to work with engines that have higher performance characteristics because they want to lift the entirety of, they don't build a Dodge Viper so that they can sell Dodge Vipers. They build Dodge Vipers so that those capabilities of serving the absolute best clients in the marketplace cascade into, look, it's been a long time since I worked at a dealership. Then it was Dodge Neons and, town and country minivans. But that concept is what is at work at this firm. We set a different aspiration to serve the best advisors. By the way, we had many of them already inside of LPL. But when you say we are aspiring to serve the best advisors in the marketplace, it means that you can't live to a best effort standard. You have to live to a different standard. And it's why we brought in a number of folks from outside of this firm to hold ourselves to a higher standard of service, to delivery against our clients. And we're not perfect yet. But the next leg on our journey is to think about this concept of unreasonable hospitality, to actually even promote even further, to go beyond not just getting those answers, getting the service right, getting the calls answered, helping them succeed, but doing things for our clients that seem surprising to delight them beyond their expectations. And so, again, another journey that we're on. But I think as we put those new models in place and define that we weren't an IBD, that we aspire to serve the best advisors, it has follow-on, which means you have to change the way your standards. And I think it's important inside of our firm, we reflected that to our employees. We reflected the standard of care was different. And look, there's nothing wrong with being an IBD. I'm very proud that we serve independent advisors, but I think your standard has to raise. And I think that's what you saw happen. Now, obviously it happened with structure. It happened with scale. The firm matured. We built better internal capabilities, but that'd probably be a bit of the story, Lewis, is you set your standards, and it's hard. If you set those standards and exceed them, that's interesting. If you set high standards and meet them, you can change a firm. And I think that's how we thought about it, was how do you change this firm? You don't just say we want to be the best IBD. You say we want to be the best firm in wealth management. We want to go toe to toe with Morgan Stanley, right? We disclose the firms that we want to be better than. And some of those firms are fantastic, but you don't get there by saying, I just want to be better than, fill in the blank firm. I don't want to disrespect any firms.
I love that. And I think the concept of the halo card, to translate it to our industry, is if we can routinely win the biggest and best and most sophisticated teams from firms that are typically hard to dislodge advisors from, that means that by bringing them on, we have to bring our A game and we have to hire the best possible people, rethink our technology. But by bringing them on, of course, you hope to win them, but it's going to cascade down to everyone else. So I think that's a really interesting analogy and way to break it down.
So much of the pivot at this firm wasn't about whether our capabilities got better. It was about whether we were considered by the highest order advisors. Our consideration was low because folks viewed us from our past. And even when we shed that skin or shed that, suit, whatever it is, we still had this legacy perception. And by the way, a lot of that is good. Like, we absolutely are here to serve advisors. We absolutely believe it's their business. But folks will look back and say 20 years ago this and 20 years ago that. And I'd say there's probably a more modern look to look at this firm over the last couple of years and see what's here and what capabilities we have. And usually when people go through, and a lot of times firms like yourself say, hey, you might want to take a look at that firm, we have really good conversations. And I think that's what we've been emboldened by, how strongly we can support really great advisor teams.
Yep. Well said. I think next on the agenda will be the LPL Formula One race car, to really put your analogy to test.
I will tell you this, man. I was at another firm, to be left nameless, that supported F1 racing, and it's a very expensive proposition to go sponsor an F1 racing team. I can tell you that. It probably sits outside of our budget at this moment in time.
All right. Well, maybe in the future, we'll come back to it. You talked a little bit about the affiliation options and broadening them to attract more advisors and to serve your current advisors in a different way as their practices evolved. I always joke when I position LPL to our advisor clients, like LPL is like 1,000 business models. And if you can really master the way LPL goes to market, you go lens into the entire industry. So in a succinct way, can you just walk through the various affiliation models that LPL has and what led you to start them?
Yeah, I'll start with the second part first, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I joined here in August of 2018, and we had an emergency management committee meeting right at the end of September. And I'd heard that the meeting was going to be about an advisor who was leaving the firm. And I was like, oh no. I was really nervous because at all the other firms I had worked at, when an advisor was leaving, there was a collective decision to try to destroy their business, which is ridiculous. And I was like, there's no way. I joined here because I don't want to do that
Right.
nonsense. It turns out the reason we had that emergency management committee meeting was that this advisor was 60 years old and she was going to go to another firm in a W-2 model. And she loved us and we loved her, but she had younger staff. She was being forced to sign a 10-year lease and she was in Chicago and she didn't want to do that. And we didn't have a great alternative for her. And so we actually put our heads together. Now, I had been kind of arguing, hey, we should go after wirehouse advisors as it is, because I'd come out of the wires and I felt like this firm's capability set was pretty strong. And that's what led us to introduce our what we call an independent employee channel. We call it Linsco, because we didn't want to see our advisors as they changed the evolution of their practice and wanted to step back a little bit from some of the responsibility of day-to-day, managing staff, taking down real estate, managing facilities, but still wanted to be independent. And we didn't want to have them go to another model. So we first identified to introduce our independent employee model. At the same time, we were building a bunch of services, CFO services, marketing services, admin services across the board. And we realized there was a version of independence that we call strategic wealth services, where we bundled a set of capabilities, made it easier to come out of the wires, took your real estate down for you, built out that facility for you, put your furniture in place, put then the burden of moving into being an owner operator, just having come from an employee model, helped you with a CFO, launched your brand, built your website, built your client engagement approach as well. And so augmented that with a set of capabilities that were internal to the firm. So those are LPL employees. And we bundled those together with relationship management and accountability partner to help you achieve your goals. And so that was strategic services. And those really pretty foundationally targeted wirehouse W-2 regional advisors as well. We enhanced our RIA capabilities to support independent RIAs as well. This firm, although we wouldn't have said it 7 years ago, really was a broker dealer. And so a lot of our capabilities were oriented towards the kind of FINRA brokerage affiliation models, and that cascaded into the way that we were a custodian. So built our custodial capabilities with intentionality around being a custodian to RIAs. And then from there, you saw us begin to evolve. We introduced a private wealth model. The concept being, and I would tell you on the institutional side, we had largely served community banks and credit unions. We expanded to serve more complex financial institutions. We then moved into support, we call them product manufacturers, think about it as insurance firms, asset managers, et cetera, in support of their wealth businesses. All of this, as if you were looking at it from a external standpoint, would say it expanded our total addressable market. That certainly was important, but as important, it expanded the options so it didn't feel like we were a boxed in firm, that we come to market in one way. And I think a lot of firms that come to market in one way will tell you that's the only way that you should do business. You got to really pay attention to that, because if somebody tells you it's the only way that you can do business, but it's also the only way they do business, it's self-serving.
Yeah.
I think our concept is we are here to serve advisors and institutions in whatever way they want their business served. And we understand that they lead and we follow, like they're the lead in the dance, right? And so we had to learn a lot of different dances because we want to be a partner to a lot of different styles. And so that's probably a reasonably good articulation of our strategy. What led us there, we lost that really important advisor and we were all pretty heartbroken about it. And I think we are hopeful that we won't lose folks for that reason anymore. It has the side effect of allowing us to be more competitive in the marketplace and be very intentional about serving different profiles of advisors with capabilities.
Yeah, well said. I think that was a brilliant breakdown. Everything starts with a story or the why behind it. It wasn't just, we're going to build all these platforms. There was actually a reason behind it. And in the case of how you explained building strategic wealth services, It wasn't that you were creating all these new functionalities. Like it was things you're already doing. It
Yeah.
was just a way to wrap them together and really hit on the pain points that advisors leaving a captive employee environment need. So I think it's brilliant. And I agree with you that the having multiple ways you can affiliate with a firm has proven over the last few years to be a ridiculously compelling recruitment tool because no advisor wants to think about having to transition a second time. So if you can join one firm and you can evolve with them, it's like a put option that as your business evolves, you can take it if you want to, but you don't need to. But regardless, you don't have to repaper. And we see it a lot with teams with an older partner and a younger partner that now you can thread the needle and help them from launch to growth and ultimately to being a buyer for their business as well.
Well, and I think that even led to an evolution in how we think about capital. I mean, the independent model historically hasn't had good solutions for advisors as they move intergenerationally. And what we saw was, solutions that came into the marketplace to buy up advisors' practices and then homogenize them and run
Yep.
them under the next iteration. And all of a sudden, the next generation, the G2 advisor, doesn't get to be the entrepreneur anymore. They just come along for the ride. And so if you think about that, that's one of the more recent introductions we've had. We call it liquidity and succession or liquidity and capital, but programs where we actually step in to buy a practice, not to run it, but to actually then sell it back to the next generation. And we think of that way that we're the stewards of independence because entrepreneurs should run these businesses. They shouldn't be run by, well, they can, that's a different model, but our model is not a homogenized model that you sell into something and then you lose the identity. Your clients affiliated, your clients chose to be with you for a reason. You've actually built a service model that looks a particular way. You have a next generation oftentimes inside of your practice. And so that was a logical extension beyond affiliation models to say, follow the advisors, give them what they need so that they can have continuity. Because I often go over the river and through the woods to get to grandmother's house, my stories. But Lewis, the truth is that we get fired by advisors, and we should get fired by advisors when we don't show up right for them. And that's actually really instructive to us as to what we're not doing well. But we get fired by advisors because we don't have flexible enough solutions to evolve with their business.
Well said. So, how do you view LPL's competitive positioning in the market? I know you mentioned the goal or the next leg of the journey to
Yeah.
be the best firm in the industry, full stop. But today, how do you view the positioning and who are you typically encountering in the competitive markets?
So this firm is interesting. When I first got here and we started changing the composition of how we go to market, I was saying to someone, I've run strategy here for 6.5 years. And I was like, wow, it's really amazing because like we name all these different competitive sets, custodians and broker dealers and independent broker dealers and regional firms and wirehouse firms and insurance firms and banks and folks who provide infrastructure and fintechs. And like it felt like the competitive fronts were massive. Like there were so many different places that, if you thought about it from a negative standpoint, you go, man, we have to defend so many fronts. But if you think about
Everyone's
it
a
from a
competitor.
positive standpoint, you'd go, wow, we have a lot of different ways we can win in the marketplace. And so it's really hard. And, I think, how do we compete in the marketplace? I think that, look, I'm going to make some statements and then other firms will say, hey, that's not true. But I would tell you, we are probably one of the most, if not the most advisor-centric firm in the marketplace. If you want to be at a firm that understands like who we serve and where you fit above us. In that hierarchy, advisors, our clients are above us. It's our job to serve them. They're not a challenge in our day. They're the reason for our day. And so that's how we come to market. The great news is that I joined a firm that had an incredibly strong strategic position in the marketplace. And there is a move to independence. You can't debate it through fact. Advisors are moving into independence, and in independence, we are the at-scale player. We are the uncompromised player, and we have built more capabilities, but our capacity to invest exceeds almost everyone in the marketplace. And so we're able to come to market with better capabilities, consistently out investing with more flexibility, with a advisor orientation, if you want to hear it. We serve advisors, so they're our clients. And so from a competitive standpoint, I feel like we are a front-footed firm that keeps getting better, that competes across the board for all types of different advisors and institutions, does so humbly with a set of capabilities that we think will be better tomorrow than they were today. And so that puts us into a lot of different conversations with a lot of different firms that folks are considering. And we do reasonably well. I think more advisors join this firm than join any other firm in the marketplace. And I think we've distanced ourselves even from, I think there's a pretty wide gap between number one in the marketplace and number two in that regard.
I love that. Look, one way to look at it is everyone's a competitive threat, but I like that you spun it into a positive, which is we just have more ways to win. Fill in the blank firm has one way to win. They have one battlefield to walk onto, but you have multiple fronts that you could compete on. So I really like the way you position that. Let's talk a little bit about your really exciting transition to become CEO of LPL Financial at the end of 2024. Dan Arnold was a name a lot of people knew, very well respected and well regarded CEO, and was at the helm of the firm through this major transformation that we talked about. So you had big shoes to fill. I know you're a tall guy, but still big shoes to fill. And I know the role was put upon you somewhat by surprise, but as you're thinking through just where you were in your career and in general, I'd love to hear how you prepared yourself for this new role, because a lot of advisors who tune in, they're advisors, they're great advisors, and they become accidental CEOs, or they're suddenly growing something that's far bigger and more impactful than they ever could have imagined. So I'd love to hear from you. Just what have you done to prepare yourself for the role, both before taking the job and now that you're in it?
Yeah, so there's a lot in that question. I would say, so I had hoped in time that this was a role that I might be able to ascend into. And while we hadn't discussed a transition timeline, I do a lot of walks we've got 3 dogs. And so I walk dogs a lot. And a lot of that time is my time where I'm introspective. And I thought about things that I would like to do in the role. And a lot of that is maintaining the legacy of this firm, maintaining the entrepreneurial nature of this firm, maintaining the orientation to our clients at this firm. But I had identified some things that I might want to do differently if I found myself into the role. And I would say I had begun to think through those things. Look, I wanted for most of my career, I like having accountability. I like problem solving. I like trying to think about how to participate in markets. I love just spending a lot of time trying to understand why firms make pivots and where there is opportunity to bring forward non-traditional strategies in traditional marketplaces. And so I think from a problem solving standpoint, and largely I think from a people leader, where I really believe that the job is to be a steward in supporting the advance of the employees at the firm. I think in that regard, I walked into the role, it was a surprise. I'd found out 24 hours before the event had happened. And so I wasn't like really prepared in that moment, but I also felt really, really good that one day. It was a terrible day for Dan. It was a terrible day for the firm. But I used to play basketball, and I can remember that I would prepare for games. And sometimes before a game, even though I was prepared, I would feel intimidated. And I often didn't play well in those games. And then sometimes, hopefully more times than the other side, I would come into a game and it might be a tough game and I would feel awesome. And I'd feel like, give me the rock. I'm ready. Right. And like, I felt that I didn't know how I was going to react on that day, but I felt like, give me the rock. And so it made me feel good. I felt like I had prepared, across my career, 30 years to be in this spot. And it didn't feel like the role was too big for me. It felt like there was a lot I could add to the firm. And so look, we're making changes in how we think about how we come to market. I've kind of talked a little bit about this unreasonable hospitality as an element we'll bring forward. I thought, we're going to elevate the role of employees at this firm. We talk about our clients a ton. The only way you can deliver exceptional experiences for your clients is actually that your employees are empowered and want to just as bad as the leaders do. And so that's some work that we'll do to bring up the balance of the firm, having a bunch of different roles, working at a bunch of different firms, and also recognizing that the best way to compete in a marketplace is go find people who do things great. Go find other firms that there are elements that you want to emulate. Bring that together inside of your construct and be, this kind of Frankenstein concept. Be your own firm, be your own vision, be your own values, but bring the best of all types of different firms to bear inside of that construct. And that's what we're going through right now is what is our Frankenstein process so that we do R&D better than anybody, but not inside of wealth management, more broadly in the marketplace. How do we become as efficient as possible, right? Think about those different disciplines. How do we deliver hospitality in ways that are, unmatched in all industries, and then bring that into wealth? So there you go. I told you I can move all over the place.
Great. I think it's an awesome answer. Two things to react to is first, that I love the concept of give me the rock. Like in a moment like that, you can either choose to cower and have imposter syndrome and just be quiet and just go along with it because you're terrified, or you embrace it. You say, I've prepared myself, I'm ready, give it to me, and I'm excited to see and show everyone what I can do. But I also love what you're saying about innovation and R&D, that innovation doesn't mean you have to recreate the wheel on your own, right? Just because someone else did it doesn't mean you can't try to borrow elements of it, but packaging it in a way that is within your own unique abilities that your firm does well gives you something that's novel and innovative, but is also true to your firm. So I try to bring that to our business, and it's always a concept I try to instill in advisors we work with. And I love to see that you're doing it at scale, right, with such a large blank canvas that you have in front of you.
I'll tell you just one other thought there, Lewis. I probably did a disservice. One of the reasons that I felt so confident was the management team at this place is fantastic. It really is for me. Often people say, hey, this is the best team in, wealth management. I don't know if it is or not. I don't work at all those different firms. But I can tell you relative to this team, I feel so great about the senior leaders at this firm and not just the people that are on the management committee, but more broadly across the firm, because we have a shared culture, a shared vision, and there's a lot of talent here. And so it gives you great confidence to feel like you can do incredibly ambitious things.
Yep.
Because when we put big goals out there, it feels like our answer is we're going to achieve them. And that has a lot more to do with the people that are at this firm than it has to do with me.
Well said. So, okay, we've had a very thoughtful, polite conversation until now, but I would be remiss not to ask you some tougher questions.
Okay.
And in all seriousness, there may not even be the tougher questions, but we'll say more of the objections that folks might raise about LPL. And would love to hear how you either overcome them or validate them or make someone comfortable with what I think are some very real fears or concerns. So let's jump right in. First question in this set: why shouldn't an advisor worry about the size of LPL? I saw a recent press release that said as of end of 2024, there was 29,000 affiliated advisors or more. It's amazing that the firm has grown to that size. But if you're an advisor coming from a firm with 18, 19,000 advisors or 10,000 advisors, and you feel like you're a number, how can an advisor be comfortable saying, hey, I'm going to go to LPL that in many cases is 2-3 times the size and growing of where I am, and be comfortable that it's the right fit for their business?
Yeah. We hear this a lot. More often we hear it from people that are telling advisors not to go to LPL. But so let's start with some facts. Maybe we start at the beginning. The average attrition, we call it industry churn, percentage is 5%. So an average firm in the marketplace has 5% of their advisors leave in any given year. Ours is 1.5%.
Wow.
So this really big firm that has 28,888 advisors has the lowest attrition that I can ascertain, because, by the way, most firms don't report on their attrition. They try to mask it. They don't actually publish the number of advisors that are at their firm. So it makes it really hard to compare. So I can only do my best to say, from what I can ascertain in the marketplace, fewer advisors leave this firm than leave almost any other firm in the marketplace. And I know this part because this actually gets published externally. By a wide margin, more advisors join this firm than join any other firm in the marketplace. So more advisors choose to join here and less advisors choose to leave. That would tell you there's some intrinsics that are working at this firm, where when the advisors get here, they're actually advocating. So by the way, if advisors were unhappy here, they would tell other advisors, don't come here, like it's not a good place. What we find more often than not is advisors are advocating. Now that's first step. Second step is, I was looking at a firm that was going through a non-deal roadshow. They were coming out into the marketplace and said they were really proud that they spent $30 million on tech dev. We spent $519 million last year on keyboards, building new capabilities for advisors. And so do you want to be at a firm that when the state of Massachusetts creates a new fiduciary standard and the state of New Hampshire says that they're going to implement electronic communications in a different way than the federal standard, that firm has to swing all their tech dev over to be compliant with regulatory changes? Or do you want to be at the firm that spends $35 million on risk and reg related activities every year in our tech, and that's just a small component of our tech dev, right? When you get to scale, do you want to be at the firm that has 35 advisory consultants? Do you want to be at the firm that has 24 consultants who are helping you do financial planning? Or do you want to be at the firm that maybe has one, and I hope he or she isn't on vacation this week, right? I run to scale. I run to the complex set of capabilities across a broad set of advisors that we have to serve them well. And so I find it, interesting in the marketplace that the narrative is that LPL is too big. But, what the data would say is that our advisors are not saying that. They are saying, look, you have to build a firm that is flexible, that has more capabilities, that directly connects to advisors, that has relationship managers, that has field management organizations, that have all these different capabilities so advisors can be successful. Ultimately, that's what we're talking about, Lewis. Whether you're a number or a name or whatever those answers are, the truth is advisors choose to be with firms that help make them successful. And however they define success, that's our goal every day. Our goal is to make advisors successful, not profit margins, not growth, not whatever the fill in the blanks are. And as long as this firm stays there and recognizes that, yes, we need to make sure we hear every advisor and we react to their needs. We have to have mechanisms to hear better, right? We have to have bigger ears than we have mouths. That's hard for me. But so we've had to grow our listening approach. And there are firms that are better than us in the marketplace. And when I run into those firms, I freaking love them. Like Commonwealth is fantastic in the marketplace in the way that they listen to their advisors. So like, let's try to be great like them. Like I have no problem naming other firms. I think Morgan Stanley has fantastic technology. So let's try to be better than them, right? So there's a lot of ways that you actually have to serve advisors, but being big is a great thing. And firms that like to name it otherwise probably like to name it that way because they're small.
Yeah, so much to like and respect in that answer. To me, like you're unapologetically large, but it's a positive in your view and not a negative. And for some advisors, it's the great thing about our industry. If you want to join a broker dealer with 100 reps and be the top guy and have that phone to the top, then fantastic. But in this industry where scale has proven to be a big deal and there's more M&A activity happening with smaller firms, et cetera, I think if I were an advisor, I'd probably lean towards scale as well. But it's not going to be right for everyone. But I love that you backed up your claims with data, right? If we're attracting the most advisors and we lose less than the industry churn rate, we're doing something right. So that's a great litmus test to back it up.
Let me give you one other thought.
Yep.
Like as soon as we get off of recording this, I'm going to go to the airport. I'm going to fly to Scottsdale and I'm going to meet with the heads of wealth of 30 of the largest and most sophisticated banks in the country who we happen to have the privilege of partnering with. And the truth is that each one of them goes and spends a ton of time together. We're there to facilitate it, but they learn from each other. And like you said, that firm that has 100 advisors for which the advisor wants to be the top dog. Imagine if there were 1,000 other advisors who were like you and we put you in collisions to where you work together. You learn more from other advisors who are incredibly successful than from being the top dog at a firm where other folks follow you. I used to sit in a branch in UBS and there was this fantastic team. And there were only 30 advisors in the branch office, and they were the Yulians. And everybody else in that office would say, oh, are the Yulians doing it? And like, who do the Yulians get to learn from? They're a great team, but everyone else followed them. You want to be at a firm where others are doing better than you or the same as you or different than you, and that they're your peers. And I think we have a network and a set of an ecosystem where advisors can be connected to other incredibly successful advisors. Listen, having nearly 29,000 advisors means that there is going to be another advisor in this ecosystem who serves special needs, families with special needs, children in the Midwest with fill in the blank XXX. You're going to find another firm that looks like you. There's huge value to that.
Yep, I completely agree. All right, next on my list here. There's some folks in the industry that say, unless you own and operate your own RIA, that you're not really independent. How would you respond to that? Since at its core, LPL is still the largest independent broker dealer. I know you have RIA custody, you service many RIAs, but how would you react to the premise of the question?
The statement is nonsense. It's a complete nonsense statement. The reason I tell you that is because those same firms that say the only way you're truly independent is if you own your own RIA, those same firms also out of the other side of their mouth say, but I run a TAMP. So please have me do your investing for you. Oh, no, I actually also have shared ADV models. And if you're not big enough, please tuck into those shared ADV models, but they're independent because somebody else is running the RIA. Firms tell stories because they have certain solutions in the way that they go to market. And so if I only go to market through supporting independent RIAs, then I say that's the only way you can be truly independent. I would tell you, Lewis, if you own your business, you're independent. If you can fire the firms that you're working with, you're independent. Now, do you want to choose someone to help you offload compliance so you work under a shared ADV model? That's a choice. Do you want to use somebody for centrally managed capabilities for how you run your investments? That's a choice. but invalidating a whole category by saying there's an asterisk. And the only way you can be independent is if you run your own RIA. And again, I would just tell you, those same firms say, but outsource all these other things to me. But I make a decision that risk outsourcing is a step too far for independence. It's nonsense. Don't say nonsense things. And by the way, there's a bunch of squeaky toys in the industry who then self-amplify that message. And you see it. It feels like there's a lot of people saying it. It's not. Go look. It's the same 5 people. And then other 7 people amplify their messages. The truth is, if you run your own business, if you own your clients, and you can make decisions as to how you construct that business, you're independent. If you work at a firm that when you quit, they try to destroy your business, you're probably not independent. And look, I'm sure that my answer is controversial for some. The truth is, I just actually think that advisors define whether they're independent. And there's not an arbitrary litmus test, because that invalidates thousands of advisors who run their own business because they choose to outsource risk or whatever their other constructs might be, that they're not independent. That's self-serving from the people saying it. The advisors will tell you whether they're independent. Go ask 28,888 advisors if they want to fire us tomorrow. Do they think they're independent? Their answer is going to be yes. So I don't know. It feels like that debate is a false debate and a false litmus test that is supported by people who have a self-interest in defining that as the only way to be independent.
I got you fired up.
I'm a fiery person, and I need to
definitely struck a nerve, but honestly, I see it the exact same way that you do. And I don't cast judgment on anyone's claims about if you need an RIA to be independent. If you're at an independent broker dealer, you're not independent. The way I prefer to frame it is there's different ways to throttle up or down the amount of support you get in going independent. And there's certain ways to get more autonomy over technology decisions, over compliance, et cetera. But like you said, those are choices. It doesn't at its core change the fact that if you own your own business, you're independent. And for some people, all they want is to be a 1099, to own their own equity, to have their own brand, and that's independent enough. And others might say, I want to pick every single piece of our fintech stack. I want to choose whether we invest in real estate deals with our clients. And you can move up and down the spectrum. But to me, I completely agree with you that if you own your own business, you can self-brand, and no one's going to poach your clients if you leave, then you're independent.
There are 2 models. We have an employee model. Those folks are independent as well. They just have someone else manage and pay their staff and provide benefits. But in the end, that's a choice they can throttle back, and they could go form their own RIA as well. I think it's a false narrative.
No, I think your answer is spot on. Okay, another question here. So LPL doesn't have a big consumer-facing brand name like Morgan Stanley or RBC or UBS or Raymond James. But obviously you have a lot of heft behind what LPL is. And some advisors would say, my clients aren't going to know who LPL is, or LPL isn't a brand that's going to resonate with my ultra high net worth clients. So how would you talk to an advisor who had this objection or had this feeling?
I mean, we hear it sometimes, right? I mean, the truth is, Louis, we always survey our advisors on how they think about our brand. So the legacy and history of this firm is that, for 35 years, we go to market through advisors. And so their brand sits above our brand. And they were pretty, outspoken for years that they didn't want our brand to be forward. And over the last couple of years, we actually saw where that used to be like 80% didn't want our brand to be forward and 20% did. That's now shifted over the last 2 years to be where 80% of our advisors want our brand to be better known in the marketplace and 20% don't. And so we're going to launch our brand in the marketplace. We're going to launch a brand campaign this year that will bring us more forward. And I think we've done a nice job continuing to stand behind advisors, and we will always stand behind advisors, but helping them validate that we're a partner of theirs that, has nearly 1.8 trillion in AUM, has, more advisors choosing to be affiliated with us than any other firm. But they need more than that. You're right. You can run into clients where they'll say, I don't know of LPL. And I'd say, hey, I think historically we'd say, well, Steinmeier Wealth Management, I'm just saying if it was my practice, Steinmeier Wealth Management is who you've been working with for the last, 20 years. But I think we realize now that our clients want us to do more in the marketplace. And so more to come there. But I think it's a reasonable question. It's a reasonable assertion. And so we're going to bring forward our support of advisors to help have them be validated, that their partner in the marketplace is more known, well-known, and validated on behalf of them.
Awesome. That's a great answer. And yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword because firms that have these incredible, sophisticated brands, the advisor is subservient to that brand. They can't be Steinmeier or Diamond
Yeah.
Wealth Management. So it seems like it's almost like finding the right balance where you still want the advisor to be able to promote their brand and their name, image, and likeness, but also have LPL stand out more. And I like that you're honest to admit that. There's some work to do with making LPL a household name so that it only enables advisors to do better and to attract certain clients that may not be as comfortable as keep their assets with JP Morgan or Merrill Lynch.
I think one, I like that you went NIL. That's cool.
Oh, yeah.
Into like college sports and
We're on theme here,
personalization.
on trend. We're doing
The
a
other one though
podcast.
is, Lewis, sometimes those brands can be an albatross. I'm not going to name the firms, but I lived through the financial crisis, and there are things that have happened subsequent to the financial crisis where sometimes those big brands can be an albatross. And so you want to strike the right balance.
I agree with you. A couple more questions and then let you get off to sunny Scottsdale.
Yeah.
What are some things that LPL is doing to attract and serve more affluent clients and advisors who service them? We'll call them the private wealth advisors or even private bankers.
Yeah. So the first is we've built over the last several years, we've had a high net worth team that has custom capabilities to provide case consultations, advanced tax planning as well, estate and philanthropic planning. We have our own captive trust company as well to help implement those capabilities. And so we've built that explicitly. We have a affiliation model, a private wealth affiliation model, but independently advisors can take advantage of those capabilities. So from a kind of services and sets of experiences and capabilities, we've built those inside of the firm and augmented those capabilities. I think when you think about from more of a tangible product side, we've been much more intentional around alternative investments. So we've built our own custodial platform so we can onboard 2,500 different alts. We have a new buying process, fully digitized buying process to help sort, identify, and then deliver digitally an experience to go through the buying process itself for advisors in support of their clients. And then the third is we've materially augmented our due diligence team to put more selling agreements and more capabilities and more product onto the platform. I think we're about to crest 100 different selling agreements. And the goal is to get towards that kind of 120 to 150 that you'd see maybe at the more sophisticated wirehouses. And so we're on that journey. I think we began last year at like 35 different products that were available. So getting towards 100 feels like a good progress. And then maybe I'd kind of round third base and tell you, building banking, lending capabilities integrated into, not through third parties, but a cash management account structure, ultimately a digital checking capability, enhancing our credit card capabilities, as well as building a securities-based line of credit that's integrated inside of our ecosystem itself instead of working through third parties. All of that an integrated set of digital banking and lending capabilities. You put all three of those together, and maybe there's a couple of things we do on our advisory platform, single contract advisory. I can go kind of on down the list, but we're acting with great intentionality around helping advisors serve high net worth families with capabilities that are uncompromised that you would expect to see at, the most sophisticated firms. And that's been a journey we've been on over the last several years.
Yeah, I think you hit on like when we're working with an ultra high net worth focused team where they have some more sophisticated clients, I think the 3 or so areas you hit on, the subject matter experts, expanded private investments or alternatives, and then banking and lending are typically critically important. So it sounds like you've noticed where maybe you've lost deals or where you're not showing up the way that you could or that you should in the market. But I think you're addressing the exact right areas. And that I think will pay off in spades. Next question for you. So LPL has been a very public and prolific acquirer of many different firms, mostly broker-dealers, including Atria, and you onboarded Prudential as part of your financial institutions crew. You bought basically, but I'm going to stumble on who the other firms are, but
Reed.
A lot of different firms over Waddell and Reed, over the years. So is M&A going to be part of your strategy going forward? Or do you feel like it's platforms baked?
Look, I think you think about it in kind of a couple of different ways. One, we go to market largely to win organically, not inorganically. And I think, as I mentioned, we are very successful in helping advisors and institutions that are changing their firms or their partnerships. And that's going to be, the primary objective that we would have. But as you look inside of a consolidating industry, we're certainly going to participate where we can win with bringing on other firms that serve advisors in a like-minded capacity as we do. It helps us. We actually get bigger. We can help them. A lot of times those firms come with capabilities that we wouldn't have had before. And so you augment. This is kind of this one of these rising tides lifts all boats. We don't feel like the sun rises and sets on M&A, but we do think that inside of the dynamics of the industry, we certainly have the opportunity to participate where there's a good cultural fit and where you may actually see that there are more capabilities. And then independent of that, where there are capabilities where we're gapped. So we've done a couple of recent deals, one advanced trading system capabilities through Blaze, or where we had proposal generations through Advisory World. We'll always take a look at capabilities where we can augment through M&A. So I'd say it's not the primary way that we go to market. It's not the primary way that we grow, but opportunistically, oftentimes you can find good fits in the marketplace.
I love it. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on recruiting deals. So there's always advisors pay a lot of attention to recruiting deals, and rightfully so. LPL has typically been amongst the most aggressive in the marketplace. And what I normally point out is that typically LPL will do something and then give it a couple of weeks, and other people are probably going to do the same. So leading the market in this regard. I'm curious if you think that the market for recruiting deals is bid up, or if you think there's potentially room to run.
So I think that we are consistent in our approach to how we actually price transition assistance. We have a returns-based approach to that, which is that we look at that and look at it as an investment. So we have return on invested capital thresholds that we commit to the board, and we stay inside of that. I've been here for 7 years, and we consistently stay in the similar return characteristic. And so you'll see ebb and flow in the way that market pricing may look like from us. And it depends on, different characteristics in the macro and how profitably we run the firm. I don't think that it is bid up per se. I hear a lot in the marketplace from other firms saying that the market is incredibly competitive and people are being aggressive. And I don't think we see that. I think that people are being responsible. I think there's, like where you may see that is W-2 to W-2 moves. I know that firms can get really aggressive in the marketplace. I think there's a couple right now that are pretty aggressive. And I think the actual interesting thing is that's a shrinking market. W-2 to W-2 moves continue to shrink because so many more W-2s are moving into a 1099 construct. So if you're dancing only in that W-2 to W-2, I think that the competitive dynamics there are pretty frothy and pretty rich. And then the other dynamic that, folks would look at is there is an M&A market that the individual advisor practice where you see RIAs, generally RIAs, not exclusively, getting bought up. And I think the dynamics there is that there's a different construct for how people think about the multiples there. So in both of those ways, you can see where there might be pressures in that advisors can get maybe higher either multiples or TA than they've seen in the past. I know people bemoan that and say it's irrational. Actually, it makes sense. I think private equity-backed firms are paying inside of multiples that they think they can realize on the sale on the back end. So I don't spend a lot of time shaking my fist at the marketplace and saying that people are irrational actors. They usually are acting outside of short duration timeframes. I think people act, in ways that they think advance their firms. And so I think firms that shake their fist are doing themselves a disservice because they're not actually looking inside of themselves and saying, am I doing something? I'm not delivering enough value. Is my value exchange not strong enough that I'm not winning in the marketplace? Instead, I say, oh, they're irrational. I think that's a cop-out. I think the market is generally rational outside of short periods of time. And I think that you see really competitive. There's a lot of dynamics in the marketplace. There's a lot of really good firms in wealth management. And sometimes people are trying to, make a show in the market, but they can't do that over a long period of time. And
That's not sustainable.
I don't see it as a matter of course.
I like that. So LPL is going to raise a recruiting deal. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, ad infinitum. I mean, just wait. It just goes up every month. So just hold out. Now my team will hate me for that. No, I mean, of course. Yeah, right. Now look, now I got to go have that edited.
Strike that from the record.
No, it's fine. No, I mean, I think we'll be responsible participants in the marketplace. I think they allude to calling out that we are irrational. I don't think we are. I think we act really rationally in the marketplace, and we're pretty consistent, actually. I think you know us, Lewis. We're not, we don't kind of fly by the seat of the pants. We're really thoughtful as how we think about underwriting, about how we think about how complex a move can be. We spend a lot of time trying to make moves easier, trying to make it easier to onboard, trying to make it easier to get you here. And so in that regard, hopefully we just make it easier and easier to join.
I like it. Last question, then we'll let you get on your way. When we no doubt have this conversation 5 years from now, what do you think LPL would look like?
I'm hopeful that from a capability standpoint, we continue to advance. I'm hopeful that we are challenging convention in the industry. I am hopeful that we are recognized as the firm that is building capabilities that other folks wouldn't even think to build. I am hopeful that we will be the firm that advisors still continue to choose. And I am hopeful that this firm is one that makes our clients incredibly successful, where they don't feel like they can have those successes any other firm. And so if we continue to orient to our clients' success and we continue to use our scale to out-invest competitors, I think they're going to end up with a firm that has generally the highest economics provided to the advisor, the lowest cost to serve for an advisor platform. And that means we have a fully integrated set of capabilities. And so you don't have to pick up 13,000 different technologies. We have them embedded, and that helps advisors succeed better than others in the marketplace. And ultimately is the place where advisors use us as the standard bearer for what it would look like for a partner. If we do that, I think we hopefully will continue our momentum in the marketplace. And if we stay humble and make sure we keep ears listening to what advisors need, I think we have the ability to be the best firm in wealth management. And we have the ability to set the mark for what it means to be fantastic. And that'd be my goal.
Spot on. Rich, this has been incredible. First off, thank you for investing time to speak with us today. I know you have a million things going on, but I learned a ton. I'm very familiar with LPL, but always pick up something new, whether it's the thinking behind different affiliation models or LPL's transformation or just how you view the future. And I think especially why scale and the size of LPL, it could be a positive in many regards. So thank you again for speaking with us today, and congrats again on the new role.
Thank you, Lewis. It was great to be with you, man. Always a pleasure.
As a financial advisor, you hold yourself to the highest standards of integrity, honesty, and credibility. You are successful because you take your professional responsibilities seriously and are dedicated to your clients. But are you living your best business life? Are your goals aligned with your firm's, or could a better option exist? Should I Stay or Should I Go is a book written with you in mind. It's a self-guided journey that walks you through the key steps that we take with our advisor clients. This strategic thought process and roadmap to professional self-discovery is designed to help you ask the right questions and think critically and objectively, whether you're considering change or not. Learn how to get your copy at diamond-consultants.com/thebook.